Paranoid and Perverted is what becomes of the second emperor of Rome. But the deterioration of Tiberius from respected military general to dirty old man may have been the result of his degenerate, deceitful, and incestuous royal family. As a boy, he watches his father obsequiously yield his mother to Augustus's love. As a young man, his mother and stepfather force him to divorce his loving wife and marry his notoriously whorish stepsister. He watches his stepfather, the first emperor of Rome, choose 4 or 5 other family members to be his successor before settling on him. Once he becomes emperor, he mistrusts advisors and sees conspiracies of assassination around every corner. Finally, he spends his last remaining years secluded on an island in an orgy of sexual perversion. Mr. Seeger presents The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, a Cautionary Tale. Episode 5, Tiberius, Paranoid and Perverted. In the year 14, Augustus dies after 45 years of rule. His wife, Livia, secures her son Tiberius's ascension to emperor. Tiberius knows that he was never Augustus's first choice. But at the age of 56, he reluctantly accepts the title. He is a tight-fisted, unpopular emperor. Although his policies do not earn him the favor of the people, the empire is, nonetheless, run fairly efficiently under his rule, and his stinginess with spending money gives the empire a surplus by the time of his death. But Tiberius's ancient biographers wrote horribly of him, of all of the palace intrigues, and of his sexual perversions late in life. His powerful mother may have wanted Tiberius to become emperor more than he himself wanted the job. Despite the growth and stability of the empire, why are the people of Rome jubilant when Tiberius dies at the age of 78? Tiberius's progress from infant to emperor is far from smooth. He was born in 42 BCE to Livia and her first husband, Tiberius Claudius Nero, who actually fought against Augustus, then known as Octavian, and on the side of Brutus and Cassius at the Battle of Philippi. Having survived the battle on the losing side, the elder Tiberius doesn't return home for another 3 years, and then Octavian forces him to divorce pregnant Livia, so that Octavian can marry her instead. Strangely, the elder Tiberius gives Livia away at the ceremony, as a father would. Nonetheless, younger Tiberius and his infant brother live with their father until his death a decade later. Octavian becomes Augustus in 27 BCE and serves as Tiberius's stepfather, but the two of them never really get along. However, Tiberius does become a successful military general. For example, in 20 BCE, Tiberius campaigns against the Parthians in the Middle East and retrieves legionary standards lost some 30 years before. In 16 BCE, he is appointed governor of Gaul, and in the next year, along with his brother Drusus, he conquers new territory in the Alps. Tiberius's reward for these accomplishments is his first consulship in 13 BCE. The joy does not last, however, because the following year, Augustus's second in command, Marcus Agrippa, dies. Tiberius is forced to divorce his beloved wife, Vipsania, the daughter of Agrippa, in order to remarry Augustus's widowed daughter, Julia, Tiberius's own stepsister. Tiberius, thus, becomes the guardian of Julia's sons, Gaius and Lucius, the new heirs apparent. Because of the fact that they do not like each other, Julia and Tiberius hardly spend time with each other, and thankfully produce no children. Tiberius himself spends most of his time away from home on military campaigns. By 6 BCE, Tiberius decides that he has had enough of the military life as well as the royal life. He retires to the island of Rhodes, where he lives quietly for almost 8 years. Meanwhile, his estranged wife, Julia, has many affairs, and so Augustus banishes her. Thus, the marriage of Julia and Tiberius is dissolved. Gaius, the heir apparent, however, will not allow his stepfather Tiberius to return to Rome. For a while, Tiberius lives in fear for his life. When the younger heir apparent Lucius dies in 2 CE, Tiberius is allowed back in Rome, as long as he takes no part in public affairs. Less than 2 years later, Gaius dies. With his heirs apparent dead, Augustus is now forced to adopt his 44-year-old stepson Tiberius as his heir. Soon after the adoption, Tiberius rejoins the military in Germany, along the Rhine River. Then Tiberius is transferred to the Balkans to suppress a serious revolt. There, news arrives of Varus's disaster in Germany in 9 CE, and Tiberius quickly returns to the Rhine to shore up the defenses. Tiberius is on his way back to the Balkans when an urgent message calls him to Augustus's deathbed in 14 CE. Everyone knows that Tiberius is picked by Augustus to inherit his powers, but everyone is also wondering if the Republic will return after Augustus dies. Never in Rome's history have we had this kind of situation. Sulla, Julius Caesar, and Augustus himself all seize power in Rome by force, not solely by inheritance. There's also another grandson of Augustus still alive, Agrippa Posthumus, reluctantly adopted by Augustus, along with Tiberius, has been exiled for some time for his nefarious behavior. At almost the same time as Augustus's death, Agrippa Posthumus is murdered by a centurion, who reports to Tiberius that the deed is done. Tiberius denies any involvement in the killing and claims that Augustus himself gave the order in his will. Wherever the truth lies, the removal of a 26-year-old rival cleared the path for Tiberius to become emperor. When the Senate decides to give Tiberius powers of the emperor, Tiberius acts reluctant to take it. Perhaps he is trying to act like Augustus. The Senate does not think that Tiberius is acting genuinely. When Augustus perfunctorily refused the Senate, they practically begged him. But when Tiberius does the same pantomime, his performance falls flat on his audience. Tiberius finally accepts the powers of the emperor, but his relationship with the Senate starts off on the wrong foot. As soon as Tiberius becomes emperor, he has to deal with a mutiny in the army. The soldiers in Germany swore allegiance to Augustus, but now they have to change their allegiance to Tiberius. The soldiers see the changing of emperors as a superb time to demand more pay. When they don't get it, they organize a mutiny. Tiberius sends his son, Drusus Minor, and his nephew, an adopted son, Germanicus, to stop the mutiny. Germanicus is a very popular prince who actually has Julian blood. His mother is Antonia, the daughter of Octavia, Augustus's sister. Interestingly, his grandfather was Mark Antony. In 16 CE, Germanicus not only suppresses the mutiny, but he even marches his army across the Rhine to avenge the disaster of Varus, recovering 2 of the 3 lost eagles and burying the remains of Varus's men. But as Augustus had warned about not extending the borders, Tiberius recalls Germanicus from Germany. Germanicus appears to be the right choice as Tiberius' successor. Tiberius makes Germanicus consul of Rome, and soon sends him to the Middle East in 19 CE with special powers to resolve conflict there. But Germanicus clashes with Piso, the new governor of Syria. Germanicus falls ill, and his decline in health is rapid and then fatal. His death has all been extremely sudden, too sudden, many feel, to have been natural. Piso is accused and convicted of poisoning him, and then is forced to commit suicide. Suspicion circulates that Tiberius, or even his mother Livia, ordered the governor of Syria to murder Germanicus, perhaps out of jealousy of Germanicus's popularity. Was Piso's forced suicide a way of covering up Tiberius's involvement in Germanicus's death? Nonetheless, Germanicus's grieving widow, Agrippina Major, returns to Rome with his ashes in an urn and their 6 children in tow. Tiberius's biological son, Drusus Minor, is now the heir apparent, but he dies in 23 CE. The mystery of his death, though, won't be revealed in another 8 years. Meanwhile, in the year 29, Livia, Tiberius's mother and the widow of Augustus, dies at the age of 86. She is the woman behind the 2 powerful men, Augustus and Tiberius. However, Tiberius grew to resent her and all of her scheming machinations. Tiberius does not attend her funeral. He forbids her deification, and he disregards all of her wishes and her will. His hatred for his mother perhaps began when she may have persuaded Augustus to make Tiberius divorce his beloved first wife to marry his stepsister. For the first part of his reign, Tiberius rules cautiously from the capital city. He is very suspicious of people trying to overthrow him. Conspiracies become so common that Tiberius vigorously enforces laws of treason and encourages informers to bring accusations. No noble feels safe during his reign, too afraid of what they may accidentally say. In the year 27, Tiberius rules as emperor from Capri, an island off the Bay of Naples. He retires to get away from his family and the Senate, never to return to the capital again. Therefore, he is not on hand to oversee the business of the Senate. He leaves the prefect of the Praetorian Guard, Sejanus, in charge of Rome. Moreover, access to the emperor on Capri is entirely under Sejanus' control. Sejanus thus gains a stranglehold over official appointments, and believes himself to have more power than the Senate and the consuls. Indeed, Tiberius will call Sejanus the partner of my labors, happy to let someone else take up responsibilities of the state. Sejanus seems to think that he can maneuver himself to become Tiberius' successor, despite being an outsider to the family and not of patrician birth. If Livia's death comes as a relief to Tiberius, it is even more welcome to Sejanus, who now feels emboldened to launch his assault on the imperial throne without the powerful matriarch around. He begins by embarking on a series of new treason trials aimed at the most important families in the Roman establishment. The proceedings are a cynical sham, with the prosecutions based on the spurious evidence of his paid informers. The intention is to neutralize any opposition to Sejanus' rise. Naturally, Sejanus singles out Agrippina and her family for special attention. There is certainly no love lost between Tiberius and Agrippina, whose mother Julia was long ago unhappily married to Tiberius. The rivalry between Sejanus and Agrippina escalates, eventually reaching a crisis point when Sejanus becomes impatient and openly plots to harm her and her children. In the year 29, Sejanus convicts her and her eldest son, Nero Caesar, of treason. Sejanus says that they were plotting to overthrow Tiberius. Sejanus banishes them to different places. Nero Caesar, her son and the apparent heir to Tiberius, is forced to commit suicide. The next heir apparent, Drusus Caesar, in the year 31, Agrippina's second son, is likewise arrested, convicted of treason, and soon starves to death in his prison cell, having deliriously eaten the stuffing of his mattress. Agrippina will be so badly beaten that one of her eyes is destroyed. In the year 33, Agrippina dies of malnutrition, which is highly unusual for a woman of her rank. The only surviving children of Germanicus and Agrippina are her 3 daughters and her youngest son Caligula, who is something of a pet to Tiberius and is secluded with him on Capri. In the same year, which coincidentally is approximate to the crucifixion of Jesus, Tiberius raises Sejanus to the rank of senator and consul. However, Sejanus' enemies in Rome discover the mystery of the death of Tiberius' son, Drusus Minor, 8 years earlier. Sejanus had an affair with Livia, the wife of Drusus Minor. Together they conspire to poison her husband in order to pave the way for Sejanus and his children to become heirs. It is Livia's own mother, Antonia Minor, who secretly sends a letter to the emperor in Capri, writing that Livia and Sejanus are plotting to kill Tiberius and Caligula. When Tiberius hears of this in Capri, he realizes that Sejanus must go. The scene is dramatic. Tiberius still feels called upon to proceed with the utmost caution. So Sejanus has been told he is about to be offered a prestigious new position. His letter, delivered by Praetorian officer Macro and read aloud to the Senate, starts off with fulsome praise, basically buying time while Macro replaces some of the Praetorians with new soldiers to surround the Senate House. Only some way into the script does the true import of the emperor's letter emerge. Abruptly, the letter changes tack, attacking Sejanus and demanding his arrest. A very surprised Sejanus is convicted and executed. He is strangled, and his body is dragged through the streets of Rome, with limbs torn from his body, and eventually thrown into the Tiber River. Livia dies shortly afterwards, either being killed or by suicide. According to one ancient source, Tiberius hands Livia over to her mother, Antonia Minor, who locks her up in a room and starves her to death. Just before Tiberius dies, he reduces his list of successors to 2 family members. Gemellus is Tiberius' 14-year-old grandson, but Tiberius suspects that Gemellus is actually the bastard son of Livia and Sejanus. The other candidate is Caligula, Tiberius' 24-year-old great-nephew. Caligula is the only remaining son of Germanicus, and is Tiberius' choice. Whether the 78-year-old Tiberius dies naturally or is murdered is uncertain. Legend says that a very ill Tiberius is thought to be dead with Caligula at his bedside. Caligula leaves the bedside with Tiberius' ring to be greeted by a crowd outside as the next emperor. But news follows Caligula outside that Tiberius has recovered and is now asking for food. A terrified Caligula orders Macro, promoted as the new Praetorian prefect, to hurry in and smother Tiberius with a pillow. Whatever his fate, Tiberius is a very private man. This is why he retreats for 10 years to Capri. Therefore, rumors swirl as to his homosexual practices with young men, even boys, in his secluded palace in Capri. The villa is situated at a very undisturbed spot on the island, and Tiberius's quarters in the north and east of the palatial villa are particularly difficult to reach and heavily guarded. He builds the special villa, according to his ancient biographers, so as to have his wildest fantasies become realized. The bedrooms of the palace are said to be decorated with erotic paintings and statues, in case a performer should need an illustration of what was required. Stories include sexual assault of those as young as toddlers and infants. These salacious and sensationalized anecdotes may be the invention of later biographers, but they do illustrate the growing odium and disrespect in which the old man is held. Because he is seemingly never around the city of Rome, or perhaps because he refuses to hold lavish games for the people, the Roman mob really doesn't like him too much. News of Tiberius's death provokes tears of joy rather than grief from the people. People want his body to be thrown in the Tiber like that of a criminal. But Caligula arranges for the body to be properly, but not gloriously, buried in the family's mausoleum. In our next episode, we will witness the people of Rome celebrating having a youthful emperor in Caligula, only to quickly regret honoring one of history's greatest monsters.